Hey, I know everyone is excited to actually do something with their app. So we'll start it simple. We'll add a button to your current screen and make that button work. So right now we know that we have a label, or as they call it, an Android, and you can confirm this by clicking on mainscreen.xml. We know that this label is called a text view. So if you've done this in other programming languages, it's quite similar. When you have a widget, you can name it so that in your program, you can actually call it. What we'll add right now is a button. If you look at the left side of your screen, you'll see a palette of items that you can add to your screen. You have text fields, you have layouts, you have form widgets. What we want right now is this one, the button. So you select the button and drag it to your layout. So if you see what I'm doing right now, I've dragged the button. It has an outline showing me where it will land on my screen. And there's a green guideline showing me how it's positioned in my layout. Once I let go, the button will be placed on my screen. And this is what we have right now. So right now I have two controls or widgets. I have a text view control, and then I have a button on my Android application. When we switch back to XML view, items have been added to my XML. So we have the text view portion here, and then we have the button portion at the bottom. You'll notice that in the code, names have been added to the controls. Button 1 there, and then if you go back up a bit, you see text view 1. Those names again are important for our actual program. Whenever you do something, make sure you save it. So again, you know something hasn't been saved if it has the asterisk beside its name. You want to save it so that the project updates and it knows that changes have been made and that those changes can be recognized by your Android project. So we go back to our button because this is what we'll try to make work in this next example. Right-click on the button and you get a couple of options. What we want is this one, Other Properties. So again, I right-clicked on the button so I can get this pop-up menu. I want Other Properties, and I want Properties All by Name. So what can I do with that? So right-click, Other Properties, All by Name. You see a list of all the properties available for that particular control. Properties, again, in object-oriented programming, are items that describe the object. If you look at yourself as an object, or you're an object of the type person, your properties would be weight, height, hair color, gender, name. Those are all properties. They have values that describe what you are as a person. In the same manner, a button has properties describing what it means to be that particular button. So we're selecting by right-clicking again, Other Properties, All by Name. What we're looking for is the property on-click. So we're looking for on-click, and there's no shortcut to this one. You really have to scroll down until you find the on-click property. So you'll see it here. Once you select it, it will ask you for one thing. It wants to know what on-click value you'll be using. What does this mean? It means that when I click the button when I use my touch controls to actually sense the clicking of the button. Or in the case of my emulator, I click with my mouse, something should happen. So here we'll place change text. Okay, take note of the name that you place here. It's a new on-click value, and we're naming it change text. Take note of that. If you have very short-term memory, write the name down because we'll need that name for what we're going to do next. I'll click on OK. Nothing seems to have changed. The unsaved marker appears again. I'll click on save so that my changes are saved. I'll go back to main.java. Okay, so main.java is where all our Java programming occurs. I'll click on that. This is still the same code that we had earlier because we haven't changed anything here. So you have onCreate, you have onCreate options menu. I'll put additional text right after the curly brace for onCreate options menu. So be very careful with where you place text here. Curly braces again indicate the scope of a certain portion of code, and we don't want to mess up those curly braces. So I'm putting it right after. So you guys can see this easier. I will just focus on my coding window. And I'll type in my additional item. Public void change text. So again, for those keeping notes, you'll notice that I'm using the same name here that I put in for the onClick value. If you've been doing Java for a long time, you'll start to realize, hey, this function here that we're typing is the one that will get executed if I click on the button. Again, on the button, we changed the property, gave it a name, gave the name change text. In the code, in main.java, I am now creating a function called change text. So that's our correlation. The name in the button that I put in corresponds to the name of the function here, so that if someone clicks on the button, this will happen. So I'll put the additional code that we need for those changes to happen. First, I'll enable the label that contains hello world. So take note of what I'm doing. I'm basically instantiating a new button called, I'm instantiating a new label called TV of type TextView. Since in Android, our label is called the TextView. And now, I'll refer to R to actually find my TextView control. So this is my code right now. I'm creating a new TextView. I'm associating it with my existing one in the screen, which is named TextView1. Okay, so if we go back to the XML later, you'll see where TextView1 exactly is. For those keeping track, this is the label that contained the text for Hello World. So we can find it because of the file called R. Again, Eclipse keeps track of the changes we make and automatically saves it onto the R file. So I'll type that in r.id.textview1. You just have to generally remember what your controls are. You don't have to remember their exact names because if you put them in correctly, once you hit the dot, Intellisense takes over and tries to give you a suggestion. Okay, so now you're looking at my screen and you're going, but sir, you have an error there, as indicated by the red squiggly marks. Why am I having an error? If I mouse over again, and if this is the first few times you're using Eclipse, whenever you get a warning or an error and you want an explanation, don't forget to mouse over that particular symbol. So I mouse over it and it's telling me now, okay, that there are multiple errors found. That's what multiple markers mean. Okay, and it can find certain items in my code. If I click on the red error symbol, what Eclipse will do is give me a suggestion on how to correct my error. Okay, so Eclipse helps us when we're coding by doing stuff like this. Click on the red error marker and you get suggestions on how to fix it. The first suggestion is usually the best solution to your problem. It says right now, import TextView. The reason why we're getting an error here, okay, so it's giving me an error here. It does not recognize TextView. And you might think, but it's part of Android, right? That's because we don't import automatically stuff that we might not need to use. In this case, we need to use TextView. To correct this, we click on the red button and just select Import TextView. 90% of the time, this is the correct solution to your syntax errors. So I'll select that, and it will add the import on top. Import Android widget TextView. Then I'll save. And then you'll notice that the red squiggly mark under TextView has now disappeared. I still have one more missing. This is actually simple enough. Find view by ID has a small d. So now I have no more errors. I'll fill in the rest of my code to make this work. So whenever we click the button, it will change. Okay, it will change the text inside the label. Okay, so now when I use TV, it picks up all the properties and methods of TextView. So if done correctly, you've now set it up so that the IDE, Eclipse, helps you complete your code. In most IDEs, this concept, again, is called Intellisense. Okay. But for hardcore people, sometimes they type faster than Intellisense, so they don't wait for it. If you're starting out, it helps to make use of Intellisense so that you don't make many typo errors. So tv.setText. You can actually put any message you want here. You want to say hi to your friends, families, loved ones. There's one more thing that I'll add on top. Every time that you interact with the Android screen, the method or function that's using it has to be able to pass the screen itself. So similar to the error earlier on, I've added view. So I've added view. Android doesn't recognize it. There's an error here. I click on it, so I get the suggestion on how to correct the error. This time, the correction is to import the view class. View is basically the class that interacts or defines the Android screen. So my imports right now are the following. So we have about 5 imports. Originally, this only contained 3. And I'll put a box around them now. These are my original 3 imports needed by a basic Android application. We've added 2, a view and a text view, so that we can interact with additional items in our app. We've added code at the bottom for change text, which we used as the same name in the buttons on click property. Okay, so container excitement, our next step is to actually run this and see our results. I'll just double click again to get back my original screen. Click on save. Make sure that I have no more errors, and I don't. I'll clear this again so that you guys can see exactly how it looks like when I run it. So I'll run it now. Again, make sure every time you run that there's an emulator that the program can go to. So it's going through the normal routine. Android is being launched. The ADB is running normally. Uploading the APK file and then installing the APK. So in a few minutes, it will tell us that it's actually running that activity, and we can start to see. So as I've said, it's a success, and now it's starting the activity. When I go back to my emulator, we'll wait for a few minutes for it to change and bring up the items that I've added. So right now, this is my current text. Okay, when I click on my button, this text will change if I did things correctly. So cross your fingers. Hopefully it works. Clicking on my button, you see now that the text inside the text view control or label has changed. Okay, so give yourself a big pat on the back because you've done so many things since the first time you started downloading the Android development tools. Not only can you run Hello World now, but you've actually coded some Java in that affects your program. You put in a button, and clicking on that button actually changes something on the screen. Still a far off way from being able to create Angry Birds, but this is a great start to your Android application development career. Next, what we'll do is put on a text box in our app so that you can enter words that can change the value inside the label.